inviting me.
Jack, have you been on with us before? Haven't you?
No, I haven't.
Well, welcome
Well, glad to be here.
for the first time. What do you do there? What's your job?
Well, I'm a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and I deal with national security and foreign policy issues generally, but I have a special interest because of my past being a Deputy Assistant Secretary in charge of combating weapons of mass destruction in things having to do with missiles and nuclear weapons, chemical and biological weapons.
Hey, not to revisit an old issue, but I got to ask you then, whatever happened to the weapons of mass destruction that were in Iraq?
Well, there were. That's a good question.
Nobody knows?
All of the intelligence agencies of the world, including our own, in 2002 time frame, early 2003, believed that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and near nuclear. As it turned out, he did have near nuclear, but whatever weapons he may have had before we invaded Iraq in 2003 with a coalition of nations, they were not found. There's some speculation that some were moved into Syria, and maybe the chemical weapons about which we now read the Syrians having lost control of were originally Saddam's. We don't know, though.
Well, therein lies the problem with me trusting our intelligence community. This is me speaking as a personal, private individual, American citizen. I was only in favor of us going against Saddam Hussein and invading and occupying Iraq to prevent, because he had weapons of mass destruction. That's what we were told by President Bush and his administration, and I'm not suggesting that they were lying.
No, because the entire intelligence community around the world believed the same thing.
So that's how the war was sold. If you remember, Secretary of State Powell going before the United Nations, citing these evidence.
Well, there were people in the administration who felt that even before the fact, that should not be the principal argument to the United Nations and to the public, that the principal argument was, in fact, and should be made, that Saddam was a supporter of terrorists and was a danger to our interests in the region and beyond the region because of his support of terrorists, including his willingness to provide them with weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have got enough people to support that in the Congress or in America, I don't think. Because
Perhaps
so. We got Chavez, we got Castro. I mean, how many places could we go liberate if we really wanted to, if that's the objective of the American military? But anyway, back to this. That's my point is, I never understood it was never explained to the American public, and maybe because nobody knows, and this is even scarier, if you know there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and all these intelligence agencies from around the world agreed that there were, so they knew where they were to know that they existed, right? So then how do they disappear?
No, I think you're skipping a step.
Okay.
And the step that you're skipping is that the intelligence agencies' evaluations of the information that they had, the bits of evidence they had, led them to a very strong conclusion that there were weapons of mass destruction there. That's the step that you're skipping, the analysis step, and their analysis appears to have been wrong.
Yeah, and that's unbelievable. How could something so serious be so wrong and be because that led to us going into Iraq in a 10-year or 12-year, ever how long it's been anyway. That was just I wanted to ask somebody of your knowledge, what happened to those weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and if they went to Syria, why didn't anybody know it? And why couldn't President Bush come on the news, and say, hey, listen, they moved them. They moved them from Iraq to Syria. Here's our satellite to prove this.
You're presuming knowledge which wasn't there.
But we went to war on knowledge that wasn't confirmed?
On the basis of conclusions of a lot of people around the world in intelligence agencies who probably came to the wrong conclusion. But nevertheless, it was based upon evidence that that the U.S., the British, the Germans.
I know, but it doesn't make me feel bad. It doesn't. And then now we're going to talk to North Korea, and you're about to tell me what we think we know now, and then we're, I'm just saying.
No, I'm not, because I'm not in the government.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway.
Well, and Jack, we know that North Korea fired a missile in the direction of Japan, and that's kind of what we wanted to chat with you about. It's gotten lost in a lot of the chaff over the shooting in Newtown and the debate over the fiscal cliff. But from your vantage point there at the Hudson Institute, this is what you study. What are the implications for America of what North Korea has done here?
From my point of view, it's very much two things. One is the launching of a long-range missile with some serious degree of success that North Korea just accomplished is a significant accomplishment in their missile and weapons of mass destruction programs. Having said, and particularly because they put something in orbit, even though it appears that they have no control over what they put in orbit at this point.
And Jack, just for some backstory there, they've had some missile launches that have been spectacular failures in the past, right? So part of what's significant about this is that it was more successful than prior efforts. That's
right. That's exactly right. This was their fifth, and this was the first one where they got something up into orbit. It was a relatively successful test, but I stress the word relatively. I want to point out to you that for a long time we've been developing a missile defense system in the United States here, and we've had a great number of tests from the 60s on, and those tests are characterized continually by some of our liberal media, like the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times, as failures. But as soon as this North Korean missile was launched, they declared it was a success. And my only point is that it takes a long time to develop the kind of record of repetitive success that we have accomplished. It will take North Korea a long time, but nevertheless, even if they can launch one missile with one nuclear warhead, they are a threat to the security of the people who they could reach with their missile. And they have something like so many of the other things that they've used in the past to threaten people with, to blackmail them for food, and for various bits of support.
And I've read, Jack, that's again part of the calibration here is that with this missile launch, North Korea has demonstrated the capacity and now the technological capacity to reach the western United States with a warhead. Is that correct?
Maybe it's borderline.
But
again, we get into whether the missile goes, 13,000 kilometers or something. It can't go as far as that, or 8,000 kilometers, and so it's a much more successful launch than any of the previous four long-range launches.
Well, and I guess sort of the issue borderline. I mean, close counts in horseshoes, grenades, and nuclear weapons.
Yeah. And in terrorism and in threatening.
Jack, talking to Jack David from the Hudson Institute about North Korea in particular, when people say, some experts say, China controls North Korea and North Korea is allowed to do this, I question that, because if North Korea is allowed to do these kinds of things with the consent of China, then China is essentially at war with the countries that North Korea is threatening. And if that's the United States, we're their number one trade partner. Why would they want to have, their pit bull, if you will, attack their best customer?
I think that your instinct that China does not have as much control of North Korea as most in the media claim and as many diplomats claim is right on target. And
that actually is more of a cause for concern. China's somewhat predictable, but North Korea very unstable, unpredictable. And I guess, Jack, one question that people are going to ask, okay, if North Korea is developing this kind of capacity, what should America do about it?
Well, my view is that we should stop doing what we've been doing for 20 years and start doing something else. And what we've been doing for 20 years is devising this package of carrots and sticks or that package of carrots and sticks to persuade them to forego long-range missiles and nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. And in my belief, they've demonstrated over and over again, and in at least some instances explicitly, that they have no intention of giving up those pursuits, the long-range missiles and the weapons of mass destruction, for anything, no matter what they promise. Their promises are not worth anything. So if you abandon, if you come to that conclusion, you say, well, carrots and sticks won't persuade them because they won't be persuaded, then you deal with it in a different way. You say, this is a serious problem to be managed. And your goal becomes to prevent them, to impede them from doing these activities by cutting off banking capabilities, by interfering with illicit trade that they have, by making it difficult for them to engage in the community, and by giving support to North Korean refugees, of whom there are now 24,000 in South Korea, who are trying to get information into North Korea with a view to ending this terrible regime.
Yeah. We got 30 seconds left here. How do they finance themselves? North Korea I'm talking about. They're desperately poor. They don't have any food. I mean, what's going on? How do they make money to support this army?
They divert what aid they get to the elites and to converting it into cash. They engage in counterfeiting, in drug trade, in selling of arms, in all kinds of things like that.
Completely rogue nation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate your time and expertise on the program. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you, too, and Happy New Year.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Jack David joining us there. Very interesting conversation. And I know Franklin Graham and other ministries do work